And welcome everybody to our introducing the Census and ACS data analysis into undergraduate courses. I'm Bill Frey from SSDAN, the Social Science Data Analysis Network at the University of Michigan. And I'm here with our other instructors, partners in this project, Jill Bouma of Berea College, Esther Wilder of Lehman College, part of the City University of New York. Little background about SSDAN. We're at the Population Studies Center at the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research. Since we began, our mission is to make demographic data accessible to the general public and for use in early level undergraduate education, so that to make census data available just to everybody, not kind of sophisticated analysis. And that's really been kind of our goal since 1995. I remember back in 1995, we didn't even have a website then. We used to mail out diskettes to faculty across the country. Anybody old enough to remember using diskettes? That's what we used to do back then. But we have webinars and workshops, and now for the second year in a row, our workshop is virtual as opposed to in person in Ann Arbor. You can see some pictures there of some of our earlier workshops in Ann Arbor, the person-to-person, in-person workshops. And we also have on our website and other ways a place that you can download modules, data sets, and also we have as a mission to sort of tell people about graduate programs in the population sciences. I can say more about that sometime if people want to know about that. This webinar and the whole project is currently supported by NICHD, National Institute for Child Health and Human Development, which is part of the Department of Health and Human Services that funds a lot of training programs in population across the country. Over the course of our history, we've had funding from the National Science Foundation, the U.S. Department of Education, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and even the U.S. Census Bureau. We're very pleased and proud and grateful for all of that support over the years. What are we going to do in this workshop? Well, today you're going to learn what to expect from the workshop. You're going to meet fellow participants and workshop leaders. There's going to be sort of some face-to-face time here. Over the course of the next week or so, you're going to discover ACS data resources provided by SSDAN and other sources, including the Census Bureau directly. See an example of a student learning module, and start developing a learning module that requires students to analyze ACS data. Of course, the real goal here is to make sure that help you to put together some learning modules or learning exercises for use in your courses using the American Community Survey, following some of the models we have or some of the models you want to invent. As we promised, if you deliver that at the end of the next year or so, we will reward you with a very small stipend and sort of get your module and your learning exercise advertised on our website so it can be shared with all teachers around the country, which is really what we want to try to do here. So it's really the formal part of the workshop is in two parts. Today, we have an hour to sort of just give you an overview of what's going on. And next week, we have 2 hours. We'll do a little bit more in depth on the ACS resources, on the best uses and practices doing this kind of stuff. And also you can give you a chance to work interactively with other members of your team or under this participant group through breakout sessions and such. And in between, we're hoping that you will be able to view a video of a longer webinar that we had a couple of years ago. Felt it would be better you could do this at your own time and on your own rather than to sort of regurgitate it all again while everybody was here. Although next week when we meet, when you have questions or you want us to sort of elaborate on some of the things that are in that video. So why the ACS, the American Community Survey? The American Community Survey is really part of something the U.S. Census Bureau has produced. Those of you who have been around long enough to take the night of the 2000 census and the 1990 census, something that comes out every 10 years that you have to fill out. Those censuses had what was called a long form. In other words, about 80% of the people got a short form in those censuses where they just asked you your age and your race and your sex and a couple other pieces of information that was needed to do congressional reapportionment and redistricting, which is the basic purpose of the census. Then about a sixth of the population, or about 20% of the population or so, got a long form with lots of different questions on all kinds of things. And that was happening for censuses for every 10 years. And along around the late 90s, the Census Bureau thought, well, this is too much to ask people at the same time. Plus, we only get this information for 10-year periods, in 1990, then in 2000. Why do we have to do that? And so in 2005, they began this thing called the American Community Survey, where all those questions that were on the long form, and here's a sample of them because they're now on the American Community Survey. You see them: social attributes, ancestry, citizenship, and so forth, education, marital status, economic, income, industry, class of worker, and demographic, are now on this American Community Survey, which gets asked every year. It's not quite as big a sample as the long form in the sample, but it's pretty close. About 3.5 million people a year fill out the American Community Survey. And as I say, it's been taken annually since 2005. The most recently available one is for 2021. Takes them about a year and a half to process everything. So the 2021 data just came out last fall. We won't see 2022 until next fall sometime. But it gives a chance for us to look at data on a year-by-year basis for a large number of variables and attributes that are, important for these kinds of courses. In other words, the content is interdisciplinary. We've had people come to our workshops over the years who are faculty not only in sociology, but in economics, public policy, public health, geography, nursing, journalism, and several more, found this kind of information quite useful for their classes, that they can embed them into courses that they already teach to sort of flesh out some of the information in terms of a quantitative data analysis exercise that students can experience. So the ACS numbers, data that are available now, come out, as I say, the most recent was in 2021. And the ACS also puts out a 5-year product. In other words, people want to have really large samples if they want to deal with small demographic attributes or with smaller geography. So when you hear about the ACS 5-year sample, the most recent one is for the 5 years between 2017 and 2021 that you can also use for various different purposes. So that's the American Community Survey, and we think it's very important. It's very useful. There are lots of other surveys out there, of course, surveys about attitudes. The general social survey is kind of an important survey that people use. But the American Community Survey is so big and so dramatically large that you can use it for many populations, smaller groups and subgroups and so forth, and different kinds of geography. And it has a great deal of information that people are interested in. And it does have the official sort of Census Bureau, stamp on it, so that it really has the quality of the kind of data that you knew. And it's used for all kinds of things, but we're using it for teaching purposes. There's growing importance of data-driven decisions, statistical tools, and engaged citizenry. These are kind of the broader goals of why we think it's important to put data analysis and quantitative reasoning into classes of all kinds. When I first started teaching as a sociologist, one of my first years, I was assigned to do the mandatory required research methods course for sociology students. When I came into the classroom, I looked down at my class roster. 90% of the students in that class were graduating seniors. It was the second semester of their senior year. They were all sociology majors. They took every other course on sociology in the entire curriculum, but put off taking the required methods course, and many of them also the required statistics course, till the second semester of their senior year. And that might be an extreme example, but what I learned from that is that a lot of the students that put off taking these two quantitative courses were scared of taking numbers, looking at courses that had numbers and data analysis. They liked the field, they liked the subject matter of sociology, the different courses they took on the family or gender studies or race relations or whatever it was. But somehow they kind of shied away from anything that involved data analysis. And so our mission, not only because of my experience, but talking with a lot of other people that we've talked to over the years in putting this project together, they found it's important and useful to be able to have tools and resources to put data analysis into lots of different substantive courses, not just in sociology, but in many other fields, as I mentioned before. So a course that you might teach, on the family or in race relations or in gender or the labor force or whatever it is, rather than just have students look at a chart or a table in a textbook, have them actually put hands-on data analysis with these census data so that they can not have a chance to actually see how hypotheses are tested, but sort of make mistakes and sort of see, well, get a feel for that, how research is done and what you need to do to get your, to find out, the answer to different kinds of questions, which you might just gloss over if they read it in a book or in a textbook. And in the process, by the time they got to taking that statistics course or methods course, would have a better appreciation why you need to have this data analysis, why it's important. And so we've had a lot of success with faculty coming to our workshops and being able to use our resources to be able to do that. I mean, here's an example, for example. You want to do this in a very simple way. You don't want to do kind of fancy statistics. And most of our data analysis tools in the SSDAN website deal with two-way tables with some controls, have chart opportunities so people can make charts out of these two-way tables. So here's an example. It says, does income differ by race? And does nativity matter? Or does education matter? Well, the simplest table is to look at a table that has income on one dimension and race on another dimension. The student has to decide, what do you do with this? Which way do you percentage it? Which way do you, what do those categories mean? And it sounds like a simple thing to do, but in an intro sociology course and in a course that doesn't have a lot of data analysis before, allows them to get a feel for what's going on. And then you can make it more complicated. You can say, well, how race is affected how race differences in income may differ based on the educational attainment of people of different racial groups, and add a third dimension to that table, and then have a couple of tables for different educational attributes, or have education by income for different racial groups. The students can then flesh that out and sort of understand that in a way. So what we've tried to do with the tools that we provided in the SSDAN project is give you lots of different data sets that you can choose to put into your coursework. Our idea is to not have either the teacher or the student spend a lot of time putting together data sets using fancy statistical software. We do that work for you. We produced over 3,000 undergraduate data sets, all of which have at the most 5 or 6 variables in them and no more than 10 categories for each variable. So you don't have to have students learn SAS or some other statistical package and spend all their time worrying about that. Rather, they can just have this kind of simple table set up and decide, well, which of these 5 variables in this data set should be the dependent variable, which one should be the independent variable, which way should I percentage the table? They make those choices. Your choice as a teacher will be to which of these 3,000 data sets do you want to put in your course, and you'll decide that by the kinds of variables that you're already talking about in your lectures and in your course project, and you'll be able to pretty easily figure out where those data sets are and have a kind of very easy data analysis project for your students to deal with. And this can be done on all kinds of laptop computers and so forth, downloading from our website. So as we say, the program we use is called WebChip. There's no need to learn complex statistical packages. It just starts simple. And I should say, I'll give a little bit of credit to, way back in the 1980s, a sociologist named Jim Davis at Harvard University. Many of you may know who he was. He passed away a few years ago. Began with this kind of approach. And what we call WebChip was originally called StudentChip, which is a program that he first invented for him to use with general social survey data. We've used it now with census data and American Community Survey data to great advantage. So we're very grateful to him, and our website, which you will see illustrated when you look at that video. Jill Bouma does a very good demonstration of how to use our website to analyze things like race and gender differences in income, and even some geographical variation in that. So I urge you to look at that and pay attention to that. So anyway, the data sets and modules that we provide in the SSDAN website, and there'll be other census resources that we'll also talk about here, but I wanted to focus on what we do ourselves in the SSDAN website, because I think for the people that we accepted to this to this particular class, we wanted to make sure that you would be able to use some of this in your courses, given what you said you wanted to do. So in topics like population structure, race and ethnic and gender inequality, immigrant assimilation, labor force characteristics, marriage, poverty, the aging population, all of these kinds of things you'll be able to analyze. So I've already taken over most of my time. I'm now going to pass the baton over to Jill Bouma, who is going to say a little bit about herself, and then also we'll hear from Esther Wilder. Jill?
I'm Jill Bouma, like Bill said. It's great to be starting this today because I actually just started a data analysis project in one of my classes today, and I start a new one next week with a different class. So I'm a huge cheerleader for this project. I've been doing it for 20 years. I think I started in 01 or 02 when they had this call for the ASA. And I was hooked. It's made a big difference in my classes. It's made a big difference for my students. And just like Bill was saying, I also teach our methods and stats, but this is what I put into my first year classes. I put it into entering freshman classes, sophomore classes. So I'll tell you more about that. You'll see in the video, if you watch it by next Friday, you can see me demonstrating one. And then next week, I'll give a sort of best practices in teaching this. So I'll tell you more about that. And today we really want to get to know you and sort of hear your goals and your background. So I'm going to model kind of quickly what we'd like you to do. So we're asking that you will just give kind of succinctly your name, your school and department, and what you're hoping to do. So I'll just model it here. Again, I'm Jill Bouma. I'm at Berea College. If you all know that school, it's a small liberal arts. We're in Kentucky. We're unusual. We serve only low-income students. All of our students get fellowships, full tuition, and all of our students work. So we have a pretty unusual model. This is my 20th year again doing this. And the courses for which I've developed modules are social problems, a first-year class, gender, a second-year class, sociology of health, a first-year class. I put pieces of it into a juvenile delinquency class. What I really want my students to learn in these projects is how to examine poverty, income, and inequality, really. I'm having students understand not just the rhetoric of we know things are unfair in this country, we know we have inequality, but now they get evidence. I can say, well, prove it. They can pull tables up, they can talk about it, and they feel it's a sense of power they feel. The main skills, again, in a pretty simple projects I'm doing, but they're quite complicated to students. Identifying independent and dependent variables, reading frequencies, creating and reading crosstab tables, bivariate tables. And then my goal is they tell a story with numbers. That's what I always tell them they're doing. And I really hope they gain some comfort and some confidence working with numbers. When they come out not hating math, I feel like I've had this huge success. And that's typically what I see. I've had a lot of students say, wow, it's the first time I liked math. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think Esther's going to introduce herself, and then I'll put in the chat what we're asking you to do. So that's me. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. And I'm really glad to be here. Like Jill, I've been working with the social science data analysis team for quite some time, I think over 15 years. And in addition to working with Bill Frey and the SSDAN team, which really spurred my work in this area, I've also been leading a lot of projects here at CUNY as well as nationally, focus on teaching faculty various tools on how to infuse data analysis into their classes. And I trace all that work really to what happened here when I attended a workshop with Bill Frey about 15 or so years ago. And so I'm very grateful for that. I am really focused on teaching students quantitative analysis skills, and especially at minority serving institutions. And I have always focused this kind of from a social justice lens. And I know Bill was talking a little bit about, civic engagement and those kind of skills. And I see it very much as a social justice issue. And I've always been inspired by these workshops, which I learned from my co-leaders as well as from participants in these workshops. So I teach sociology at Lehman College, which is a minority serving institution here at the City University of New York. We're the only four-year college, a public university in the Bronx. And I have developed modules for classes I teach in the sociology of healthcare, in disability, as well as death and dying. My background is in demography. And in my teaching, I generally focus on, like Jill described, very fundamental descriptive statistics. And what Bill described is really the focus of our workshop here today and next week. So I work on making sure that students are comfortable making and interpreting bivariate tables and graphs, and also improving my students' understanding of basic descriptive statistics, including percentages, ratios, and rates. And like Jill, I'm also very much focused on empowering students to feel comfortable and feel more interested in undertaking data analysis in their courses.
I want to thank you for joining us today. We look forward to getting together next Friday for a longer session after you've had a chance to sort of digest some of this stuff and give us some questions and things to think about. So appreciate you joining us. Esther, Jill, do you have anything you want to add to what we've already said?
I'll just thank everyone for being here. It was great to hear all the introductions. Really enjoyed listening to everyone.
Yeah, ditto. It sounds like a great group. It's going to be exciting to work with you.
Okay, well, thank you. Have a good weekend. Have a good rest of your St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you next week.